Today I wanted to do a video on this Aglaonema that I've had for a while. It is currently in a self-watering pot, and as I was looking at it, I noticed that some of its leaves have these little bumps on them that don't move, and I was trying to figure out what it was, and after doing some research, I found out that it is called undema. And basically what that means is it's little bumps that form when the plant has too much water. So I'm not the biggest fan of this self-watering pot, but this Aglaonema is also getting really leggy too. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this opportunity to do a chop and prop. You may notice that she also has some blooms up here. These blooms take a lot of energy away from the plant, so we're going to be getting rid of these little blooms as well. And then we're going to be making chops on some of these longer stems and repotting them into their own new pot. And since I'll be propagating them, I've decided that I'm going to use a mix of sphagnum moss and perlite. I've used sphagnum moss for propagating Aglaonemas in the past, and it's been the only thing that has gotten them rooted, at least for me. This time I'm adding a little perlite just because I think that's going to help so that we don't get root rot in there. If you've had Aglaonemas, you know that they like to be so moist that sometimes root rot can be a problem. So I really think this combo of perlite and sphagnum moss is going to be helpful. I'm going to go ahead here and look at where to make the cut, because I am going to try to let the mother plant that I make the cuts from, going to try to do better with not overwatering her and see how she regrows. So I want to leave a couple leaves, I think, on here. Sorry if the angle is bad. All right, so I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna make the first cut here. I made kind of a diagonal cut just because I feel like in the past that's been helpful. I'm also, before I pot her in her own pot, gonna remove these lower leaves. And let's see, I'll do this one as well. So this one's gonna kind of look like this, and then I'll put her in this pot with the medium there in just a second. So that's our first one. I'm gonna leave this tiny one because it's too tiny to chop and prop right now. Also, a side note, because I didn't say it before, make sure you sanitize your snips, which I did prior to this video. I think another good spot is gonna be right here. Again, gonna try to make a diagonal cut. That's just my preference. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I just feel like the diagonal cuts kind of help so that root rot isn't such an issue. Everybody kind of has a different experience and method though. So this one I think is gonna be good. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove that one just in case. And this is going to be the last one. This one is kind of difficult because I don't know. She's already so leggy in here. I'm kind of thinking of making the cut right about here so that I at least leave her 2 leaves on the bottom. So this is kind of what mother plant's going to look like. I'm going to put her under a really good grow light and maybe repotting her because those edges are looking gross, I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna go ahead and take these blooms off just so she can put the energy towards her new roots that she needs to create instead of these blooms. Because nobody grows Aglaonemas for their blooms, just saying. Alright, so we've removed that. I am going to remove some lower leaves here. You can see this one's kind of falling off here. maybe one more leaf. All right, so she's got a good little bit of stem that I think will help her. So these are the 3 cuttings that we're going to pot together, which will also really help this plant look really full and nice, I think. Aglaonemas have a tendency to sometimes get really leggy and they look kind of wonky, so I think that this will be a good setup here. I've got my sphagnum moss mixed with my perlite here. Gonna see if I can not make a huge mess. Put some down in here. Gonna kind of see where we're sitting at here. It's not too bad, maybe just a smidge more. Okay, so it's just kind of looking good there. I'm gonna try to situate these down in here. Give them a little space in between, kind of like this. Now it's just going to be backfilling the moss. Hopefully I have enough here. I used my naked root pot, as you can see, to fill it up with water and get my sphagnum moss and perlite all moist here. Hopefully I have enough. Sphagnum moss can be tricky because you always feel like when it's dry, you've pulled out a lot, and then you go to put it in there, and it's a lot less once it's all moist and compacted more. Okay, so this is kind of what she's looking like. I didn't fill the pot all the way up because I have her sitting kind of low down in there, but I think that this is going to be really good for propagation, especially keeping those stems lower just in case the top of this does dry out a little. She can still reach the moist bits in the bottom. So this is what we have for the propagation right now, what it looks like. This is Mama Plant. And I will keep you guys updated on how they both do after this chop and prop.